right. Okay, so I guess we're recording now. So everybody, thank you for joining our Medical Genomics Program virtual information session and networking event. My name is Dr. Erin Stiles, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you to this session. Before we get going, I'd just like to start by hearing from some of you. The first question that I have for you is, where are we all Zooming into this session from? So I'm currently here in the GTA, but I bet that's not true for everybody. So if you guys want to throw it in the chat, where are you from? Where are you right now? Oh, a lot from Toronto, a lot from the GTA. Wonderful. Saskatoon, India, London. Wow. Thank you guys so much for Ecuador. Holy cow. Nepal, Iran, BC, Assassin, BC, Hamilton, Poland. Oh, that's so cool. Okay, so we are coming from all over the place. Feel free to keep dropping your locations in the chat. That is fantastic. Thank you all so much for coming from near and from far. Oh, from the US, fantastic. Okay, thank you guys so much for coming, for taking times out of your busy local and not so local lives to join us to learn about the MedGen program and to ask your questions. So my name is Erin, I'm the director of the program, and I am thrilled to have you here. So before I launch into telling you about the program and how to apply, I just want to talk about the field of medical genomics for a second. So the study of genomics represents this ability to understand and interpret and then really harness the information that's contained within our DNA. And this area is really rapidly growing. It has really far-reaching implications, all the way from the laboratory bench where people are doing wet lab experiments, right to the patient's bedside where doctors are making groundbreaking differences in individual patients' lives with precision medicine. Now, medical genomics is this emerging clinical discipline that relies on using genomic information about an individual to inform decisions that we make about their clinical care. And so technological advancements in this still relatively new field are really driving us towards this interesting new kind of healthcare, this new era of healthcare. And the field is exploding right now. We know more about the human genome, about how our genetic information impacts our health than we ever have before. But because this field is so fast-paced, because things are changing so quickly, these advancements are creating this widening knowledge gap between cutting-edge genomics research, what we're doing in labs, what we know is true, and current clinical practice, what we can actually bring to patients. So that's a bit of a problem. So why would you do a master's in medical genomics now that you know about that problem? In collaboration with policymakers and researchers and industry and healthcare leaders, we in the Temerity Faculty of Medicine here at U of T, and specifically in our department, in the Department of Molecular Genetics, we've identified that there's this growing need for laboratory professionals and for clinicians who can generate and integrate and then interpret genetic and genomic data for patients. And so that's what this program is really situated to provide to you as students. The Professional Masters in Health Science, or MHSc program in medical genomics, places graduates right at the vanguard, right at the cutting edge of genomic medicine. And it's really, really oriented towards this new way of thinking about research and about clinical science through this lens where genetic and genomic data are routinely being gathered and analyzed across a huge range of patient populations and for many, many different medical reasons. So our mission in the program is to give our students a unique training and learning opportunity to teach them practical and theoretical aspects of modern genetics and modern genomics with a strong focus on how these things can be applied in a clinical setting, and then to give our students directly actionable skills and career enabling experiences so that at the back end of the program, when you're ready to graduate, you're ready to hit the ground running and get a great job. The program itself consists of a core set of lecture, discussion, and project-based courses that span 2 years or 5 semesters. And notably, here there's no graduate thesis, which is a major difference between this professional program and the majority of the other graduate programs in our department and in most universities, where you would have to write and then defend a thesis. We don't do that. There's a lot more information about all of our core courses on the program's website, but in brief, Our students take 2 pretty high intensity classes at a time, as well as this one longitudinal modular course called Future Directions in Medical Genomics that pops in and out of your experience in grad school. So the first year is dedicated pretty much exclusively to core competencies. And so here we're focusing on human genetics, learning the basics and the advanced skills in human genetics, biological statistics, so that you're ready to do some bioinformatics, and then thinking very deeply about genomic methods. In the second year of the program, we sort of switch gears a little bit. We focus on really big picture application-based courses. So we're talking about how to communicate genetic and genomic information to different kinds of audiences, and then some of the ethical and legal implications of bringing genomic medicine into the clinic. And then we culminate our program with this hands-on capstone practicum project. And this is really one of the crowning jewels of our program. There's going to be an opportunity to hear a bit more about the practicum shortly, but as a general overview, our program has really wonderful pre-existing relationships with many different groups around the GTA and across Southern Ontario. And now as we move forward with the program, we have partnerships on the other sides of Canada and even some international partnerships. And although the type of practicum projects that our students end up placed in are varied and they change every year, in general, the projects fall into 4 major categories, including clinical diagnostics, clinical research, working in biotech and in the startup industry, and working with government agencies. And then I also have this other category because there's always an opportunity for our students to organize a self-directed practicum placement if they have a really specific interest in the field of genomic medicine that isn't reflected in our current placement partnerships. So, what do our graduates do, and how will they address this knowledge gap that we've identified in our healthcare system? As a new professional program, this is a pretty important question for us. And as prospective students, I think it's safe to assume that that's a pretty important question for you too. So one of the big goals of our program is to really prep our grads with career enabling skills for immediate practical implementation. And so with that in mind, our graduates should expect to be suited for a wide variety of professional roles. So we know that our grads are ideally suited for work in clinical diagnostics facilities or in clinical research labs, really implementing the tools of genomic medicine and filling this major and growing need in the realm of genome and variant analysis and annotation. So this is what we call the science detective work. We also know that our graduates are attractive to publicly funded enterprises and to private companies that are generating and interpreting genomic data. And this could either be for direct to consumer delivery or for a clinic. And we know that based on the program's very strong emphasis on both verbal and written communication, our graduates are also very well suited to a variety of different science communication roles, project management roles, consulting roles, and health policy roles. And we have graduates working in all of those areas. Some of our students arrive in the program and they're already clinicians or they're well on their way to being clinicians. And so those clinical graduates who enter into the program either really already established in their professional practice or on a pretty clear clinical trajectory, those grads are expected to finish up the program and then complete their clinical training or return to an existing clinical practice in some kind of new capacity. And then we also recognize that some of our students are very likely to pursue further education in any number of relevant fields, including medical school, genetic counseling, law, or PhD level studies. So this degree really allows our graduates to address an observed need in both the lab and in the clinic-facing sides of the field of genetic medicine, and to enable new kinds of career paths. And that's something that I just want to focus on for a minute. So I opened a few minutes ago by suggesting that this program is geared towards a new era of research in clinical science. And I want to just think about that for a minute. So in both clinical and in research labs, genetic and genomic tests are a growing component of the data that's used to guide clinical treatment and to guide research. And so these tests have progressed. I'm sure you guys have heard in undergrad, they've progressed from looking at single genes by Sanger sequencing to looking at panels of multiple genes to collecting whole genome data or whole exome data. And as we've moved through that increase in complexity, It's also led to an increased complexity, both in understanding those results and then communicating those results. So I just spent a couple of minutes telling you about some of the careers that we know exist right now, that our graduates are very well suited for, that our graduates are already working in. But because this field is changing so much and so quickly, in addition to all these possibilities that I always put on this slide, we're also training for students for jobs that don't exist yet. And so that's something that we know. By the time you graduate, there will be new things on this slide, things that I can't predict yet. So that's one of the really exciting things about the field and about the program. So hopefully I've piqued your interest a little bit. And now I'm going to talk very briefly about our application process, specifically who are our ideal candidates, what do you need to submit, and what can you do to prepare. I'm also going to take the opportunity to highlight that all of the information that I'm about to share can be found on our program website, which I've put here on the slide, and hopefully which one of our communications assistants will drop into the chat now. So SD Joe, if you're here, you could drop that in the chat. And if not, any of the other students who are here can do that for us. Beautiful. Thank you very much, SD Joe. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about the program and how to get in. So it's the first program of its kind in Canada. And one of the things that makes us really special is that we're a dual stream program. So we accept students into either a clinical stream or a lab stream. So in a very general sense, to enter into the clinical stream, applicants must have completed a PharmD or an equivalent degree in pharmacology or pharmacy, a PDEP accredited BSc in food and nutrition, a nurse practitioner graduate program, at least 1 year of an undergrad medical degree while remaining in good standing with your medical program, or a full completed recognized MD program. To enter into the lab stream, which I think probably applies to the majority of you here at this virtual event, applicants must have completed a 4-year BSc in a relevant discipline. So I've listed some here that we know are an excellent fit for us, things like molecular genetics, biochemistry, cell and systems bio, genome bio, but this is not a prescriptive list and it's not an exhaustive list. So there's quite a bit of flexibility with the academic history, especially if you have relevant extracurricular experience. If you've been working professionally in the field, if you've had a lot of lab experience in a genetics lab, even though you come from a different academic background, there's quite a bit of flex here. If you're not sure if you're a good fit, feel free to throw it in the chat or reach out to us afterwards and we're happy to chat about it. The great thing about this program is that our 2 student streams move through the program as one cohort. So for the most part, they take all the same classes and they engage in most of the same activities. And the idea is that this shared training environment lets students better appreciate the role of genetic testing, both on medical practice and on lab work, and really enables experience-based discussions, since our 2 different streams provide really different voices in a classroom. All right, I also want to note that tuition is independent of the stream of entry. Tuition for all graduate programming across the university is set annually by the university administration. While the exact amount for next year hasn't been announced yet, domestic student entrants should expect to pay somewhere in the ballpark of $10,500 Canadian, international students somewhere in the ballpark of $35,000 Canadian. I also want to note that as a professional program, we don't offer our students a research stipend, but all of our students are eligible for TA positions and university work-study positions. And some of our students are also eligible for Temerity Faculty of Medicine needs-based bursaries, which you don't have to pay back, as well as student bank loans, which you do have to pay back, and OSAP loans. Yes, so I just saw some OSAP questions in the chat. Eligible for OSAP, definitely. In terms of actually applying to the program, everything you need to know about how to apply to the MedGen program is on our website, and it's housed in 2 major locations. All of the details about our admissions pipeline are available in our admissions portal, which is at this link here. So SD Joe, if you can throw that in the chat, that would be fantastic. And more specific instructions covering how to apply and what you need to submit with your application are provided in our application procedures portal, and the link for that is right here. So the front end of those URLs are the same and the back end is slightly different. And again, SD Joe is throwing those in the chat for you right now. So I'm not going to go over this in too much detail in this session, since the information provided on the website is very comprehensive. But in brief, there are a few things that I do want to tell you. All of your applications should be submitted online through the University of Toronto's School of Graduate Studies. And you can find that here, apply.sgs.utoronto.ca. So you don't apply directly to us via email. You would only ever be applying to our program through this SGS portal. We have, for our program, 2 application deadlines during this academic year. Both of these are oriented towards a September 2022 start date. So irrespective of whether or not you get your application in for January 15th or for May 1st, you are applying to begin the program in September. Fundamentally, there is not a meaningful difference between these 2 application dates, although I do always suggest that our prospective students apply early for our early admissions deadline, since we do tend to make slightly more than half our offers in that winter cycle. So the specifics, the deadlines are in January and May, respectively. For each of the 2 deadlines, you'll notice that there are 2 important dates listed. The first of those dates, January 15th in the winter and May 1st in the spring, that's the deadline for your application package to be submitted through that SGS portal. So you have to do all your work up front and get it into the SGS portal on that first date. The second 2 dates, February 1st and May 15th, those are the dates when your documents and your accompanying reference letters are due. So these can be uploaded to the SGS portal up to 2 weeks after the application package is due. If you have any questions about this process, please don't hesitate. Again, throw them in the chat anytime. And in the next few slides, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what you should include in your application package. A completed application package for the MedGen program is going to include either 5 or 6 items, depending on whether or not you're a domestic or international applicant. Domestic students, you will need to submit 3 reference letters, a scan of your unofficial transcript. So at this stage, you do not need official transcripts. You'll need your CV, a transcript summary form, a letter of intent, and then international students, you will also need to submit proof of English proficiency. And the caveat here is that if one of your transcripts clearly indicates that the language of instruction was English, you do not need to do that. Again, detailed instructions for completing all of these items are listed on our application procedures webpage, but I'm going to draw your attention to a few key points on this list. When you are completing your SGS application, that portal will ask you to provide contact information for 3 referees. They're going to write your reference letters for you. And when you submit your application, that is going to trigger the SGS system to automatically contact those 3 people at the email addresses that you entered. So it's up to you to ask those referees well in advance of pressing submit and triggering that automatic form submission. You need to ask them in advance if they will be your references, if they're up for that. You can even have a meeting with them to ask them to highlight specific things. I strongly recommend checking in our application procedures. We have a few tips on choosing referees there. I recommend checking those out to think about how to pick your references. The transcript summary form is something that helps our admissions committee determine how well your specific academic background has prepared you for success in the MedGen program. So it's going to ask you to outline courses that you've taken that touch on various academic nodes that we are interested in. But it's important to note that the categories in that list are not prescriptive prerequisites for the program. So for example, it's going to ask you, have you taken any coding classes? Have you taken ethics classes, law classes, philosophy classes? You don't have to have anything to go in any of those categories, but if you do, you should highlight them. So none of these things are required for entry into the program. We would just be very interested to hear about it if you have taken classes like that. I also really strongly recommend that international students or students who are applying to the program with international degrees go and check out our international students page, and we are going to post that in the chat now. So SD Joe, if you have that international page, oh, thanks, there it goes. Wonderful. So I strongly recommend that international students or students with international degrees check that link out. It has a lot of really great hot tips. The letter of intent, item number 5 on this list, it's important enough for your application package that it deserves its own slide. I would encourage you to include in your letter a description of why you are interested in this program, as well as why we should be interested in you. You should tell us what your short-term plans and your long-term plans are. Tell us about your relevant experiences. And if you want to, this last one is optional, tell us about any extenuating circumstances that may have impacted your timing or your academic trajectory. So for example, if there was one semester where your grades dipped very noticeably, you could use your letter of intent to explain that. You don't have to, but you can if you want to. I would also recommend that you steer clear of a few things. You should not use this letter to write out your entire life story. And you should not use this letter to focus too much on things other than things that are directly relevant to this program. So for example, focusing on things that are too far away from academia, science, clinical work, or your research work. You should also not use your letter of intent to focus too deeply on things that you've done in courses, although you can certainly mention it a little bit. Your coursework is something that we will already have ready access to with your transcripts and your transcript summary forms. So use your letter of intent for other things that are not necessarily in your CV and that are not in your transcript. All right, so what happens after you submit your application package? After our admissions committee has had a chance to go through all of the applications, our short list of applicants, our most promising applicants, will be invited for a short virtual interview with a panel of people from our admissions committee. In the winter, these will take place over the month of March, and in the spring, these will take place over the month of June. And you will be notified via email if you have been selected for an interview. So when you submit your application package to SGS, make sure that you have typed your email address in there properly, and then keep checking that email address that you've listed as your point of contact for a letter from us, because you will need to respond to our email to confirm your interview date and time. If we don't hear from you, we will invite somebody else. These interviews are the last step in the admissions pipeline for our program. After that stage, you will be notified by the School of Graduate Studies and by the Molecular Genetics Department when a formal decision about your application has been made. And if we've decided to make you an offer of admission, I will also reach out to you directly by email to invite you to join us. So, should you do it? Right now, we are looking for the class of 2024 to join us next September. And we want people who are excited about genomic medicine to join us here. We want people who want to get the training that they need to be ready to fill this huge gap that needs to be filled right at the intersection of genetic and genomic research, clinical practice, informatics and data analysis, bioethics, and new biomedical technology. All of these industries are changing really fast, and new ones are popping up all the time to accommodate the changing landscape of genomic medicine. So we have every reason to believe that some of the most in-demand jobs for our graduates 2 years from now will be the ones that are only just now being developed to meet the needs of this really exciting new field. So we know there's a need for people with this kind of education, and we're going to give our students the tools that they need to situate themselves in this field, to solve interesting clinical and scientific problems in this field, and to carve out great careers for themselves in a bunch of different areas. So I'm going to stop talking here. The last thing that I want to tell you is that our portal is open now. So we are now accepting graduate applications for a September 2022 start date. In a moment, we're going to move into the second part of our info session, which is a panel discussion with some of our current students. But I'm also going to note that you're more than welcome to reach out to me. My email address is here on the slide, erin.stiles@utoronto.ca. I also suggest, if you have specific technical or logistical questions about how to apply, that you reach out to our administrative account, which is heavily moderated by a wonderful administrative assistant. And you can access that at medicalgenomics@utoronto.ca. Please reach out to us at any time if you have questions, concerns, you just want to figure out where you would land in this program or how to apply. If you have questions about connecting with references, the program in general, please do reach out. I also would really strongly encourage you to keep in touch with us in other ways. So find us on social media. We're on Instagram now, U of T Medical Genomics. We're on Twitter, U of T MedGen. We're also on LinkedIn under our own name. And you can check out our program website. That website has gone up in the chat again just recently. And I would also suggest that you check out our student blog at uoftmedicalgenomics.blog.home if you want to see some of the great content that our current students have been writing as part of their coursework.